Hey folks, how's it going? Silent Techie here and welcome back to the channel. Today we've got the second part of the Athlon 200GE video, where we will be looking at the gaming performance of the Vega Inter 3. I did it again! I focus strictly on gaming performance of the Vega 3 integrated graphics in modern titles. So let's get to it. So I'm not going to be talking about the Athlon and its specs. For that, go and watch this video where I'll also go into the productivity performance of the Athlon 200GE. Here we are going to be strictly looking at gaming performance, so let's take a look. Our system today, of course, consists of the Athlon 200GE, the ASRock B450M Pro 4F motherboard, 16GB of DDR4 running at 66 MHz, due to the limitations of the Athlon, and the Wraith Spire cooler, which is overkill for this CPU, but I like how it looks, so I'm going to keep it there. Here we go. So, Shadow of the Tomb Raider at 1080p. At 1080p, the average was 15 with minimums of 3. Yeah, look, not particularly playable, and it's also at the lowest preset too, so not that great. 900p gives us a bit better performance with an average of 19 and minimums of 7, but the winner here is 720p with the average of 26 and minimum of 16. Now, I found that comfortable to play on. It didn't look great, of course, and 720p, of course, these days doesn't look particularly that great these days either. So, but it still performed really well. Now for Far Cry 5, at 1080p with an average of 11 and minimum of 9. Yeah, look, it's just not really playable. 900p got us a 15 average and 12 minimum, and 720p broke the 20 mark with an average of 21 and minimums of 18. Now, one thing I do notice with this is that I'm not sure whether it's to do with the game engine that is favouring it here, but the minimums are quite close to the average, which indicates less stutter throughout 1080p, 900p and 720p. It's something that didn't occur in any of the other games, so perhaps it's just really well optimized for the Athlon and its Vega 3 integrated graphics. So, Deus Ex Mankind Divided at the lowest preset again. 1080p average of 10 with minimums of 4. Yeah, again, just not playable. Especially with 10, like it was just stuttery. It just wasn't really nice to watch. 900p got us a little bit closer with 14 FPS and minimums of 10. And 720p got us 19 average and 14 minimum. To be honest, I don't really consider this game playable. Yeah, none of the resolutions that I tested here even broke 20, which is a real shame. Okay, Assassin's Creed Origins. Yeah, there's a bit of a running theme here where, again, 1080p is not very playable, except 900p isn't that much better. The 720p edges ever so closer, and that's again what we have here. Personally, I wouldn't consider this title playable, but it was still better than 1080 or 900p. Alright, so now in Counter-Strike Global Offensive, I tested this in the very low preset with the FPS benchmark map, which you can download from the Steam Workshop. So we only have the average FPS here rather than the minimums, but anyway, the 1080p average of 41, 900p average of 47, and 720p average of 50. Now, I was both surprised and not surprised at this, because I know that CSGO is not very GPU dependent. It can run on a potato. So for me, it seems to indicate that it's the CPU which is a bottleneck and just isn't able to push those extra frames. But 720p average was more than fine. Now, after going from over 100 FPS down to, well, 50, it was a bit of a shock, and I got my ass handed to me, basically. But yeah, like if you aren't used to that, though, like those type of frame rates, then this would be more than fine for your experience. So with Warframe, we tested this one at the medium preset with motion blur off, because Warframe is such a beautiful title that I think you want to be trying to aim for medium if you can. Because on the lowest presets you really do miss out on some of those nicer looking textures. But of course, if you do turn it down to the lowest, then you will see a more of a performance boost. Just keep that in mind. Alright, so 1080p average of 19 with minimums of 7. So again, 1080p not really playable. 900p gave us an average of 22 with minimums of 14, which bit better, but I still didn't like the experience. And again, as the recurring theme, 720p gave us an average of 33 and minimums of 25, which is pretty much a console-like experience just at 720p, which I don't think is overly that bad. Okay, so this last game here, I'm not a big fan of the game. I just ran it because I know that a lot of my friends and I know a lot of other people do like it and do play it. So I thought I'd be a moron if I didn't include it in the benchmarks. So 1080p average was 30 with minimums of 19. Yeah, look, it was okay, but those drops did actually affect gameplay, and it was actually harder to play competitively when it dipped to 19 and below. 900p average was 37 with minimums of 19. A bit better. Still, those dips were just a little too much for me. But we saw the best improvement at 720p with an average of 58 and minimums of 36. Yeah, it was basically like perfect. Like in the sense that it's almost at a 60 FPS target, and even when it did go down, it was still above 30. So I didn't really have that hard of a time trying to work out what I needed to do and fight. Shoot where I needed to. As you can see here, 1080p gaming is pretty much a no-go, with 900p sort of being okay, but 720p being almost like the sweet spot for gaming on the 200 GE. For those who play Fortnite, if you keep the resolution at 1080 or whatever monitor size you're using, but lower the resolution scale to 720p, you'll find that a very enjoyable experience. So 1080p wasn't really viable for most games, and 720p often got close to reaching that 30 FPS target, which is where the gaming experience starts being more smooth, which is a good sign. There is something that I would like to address that Riley on Linus Tech Tips said in a recent video, that the Athlon 200 GE is a processor that's really only good for MOBAs like League of Legends. But here I've clearly shown that it's still capable of gaming on some popular modern titles such as Fortnite, Warframe, albeit with reduced settings. Now you don't have to pair this processor with a B450 motherboard and 16GB of DDR4. You could get an A320 motherboard, which is cheaper, and 8GB of RAM if you're looking to save money. But if you do plan on upgrading to a Ryzen processor, you're going to have to be careful which one you get, because the A320 boards are made more cheaply, and so the things such as the VRM and the power delivery may not be up to scratch. So a decent B450 motherboard is probably where you want to try and go. But yeah, I would seriously recommend getting a B450. They often have better heat sinks on the VRM, and often they just look a little bit nicer. And they also support 2nd gen Ryzen as well as 3rd gen Ryzen officially, because an A320 motherboard will support a 2nd gen Ryzen, but it's not officially supported by AMD on 3rd gen Ryzen. Some motherboard vendors such as ASRock have allowed the 3rd gen Ryzen to be used in those boards through a BIOS update, but it's still hit and miss as to whether it actually works well or not. So to conclude, the Athlon 200 GE is a great processor on a modern platform, and if you're looking to save money on a graphics card, then this might be a viable option for you. Especially if you want to play some older AAA games from about 9 years ago, and even some modern games at 720p. So before I do end this video, before I go, please let me know how you felt about this video, how you felt about this being split up into the productivity benchmarks and the gaming benchmarks. And if you like this format, then please let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like, feel free to comment down below, hit the subscribe button if you want more tech videos coming your way, and I'll try and catch you all in the next one.